right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I'm coming to you from the Broken Skull Ranch way out here in South Texas, enjoying myself. My wife, Kristen, just went into town to go get some groceries. I'm sitting here on the ranch by myself with 3 Labrador retrievers, and it is very peaceful. The rain has moved away, it's cloudy, it's overcast, and today is going to be a beautiful evening to sit inside a deer stand and watch some deer. That's what I'm going to do. But hey, man, let me talk to you about today's show real quick, because I was on my Twitter account and I saw a tweet that real Mick Foley on Twitter sent out, and it was a link to his Facebook page. And he wrote an article on his Facebook page called Final Raw for Foley, and it was just basically Mick pouring out his heart and soul about the state of the business as it pertains to WWE. So after reading the article, I sent Mick a text message and said, hey, man, would you like to come on the podcast and talk about this? And he said, sure. So I know I told you guys I was going to do a Q&A, but I still saved your questions. But I figured, hey, man, since Mick's got something on his mind, I figured you probably want to hear me talk to Mick, and I'll get to your questions on another podcast. Anytime you can get a guest like Mick Foley, that's a pretty good get. He's one of my good friends in the business, one of my former travel partners, and a guy that I have a whole lot of respect for. And I wanted to get his take on the situation because as much as Mick loves the business, I do as well. So that's the conversation you're about to hear us get into. And it's 2 guys talking about the business, not 2 bitter veterans, not 2 guys that are complaining, pissing, moaning, or whining, just 2 guys in conversation. Before I get to Mick, hey, man, Broken Skull Challenge is coming to CMT on January 3rd. I just got finished doing the Taz show with the one and only Taz. We talked about that. It's going to be a badass season. It's coming up in about a month. And I got some new T-shirts that I'm going to be wearing on Broken Skull Challenge. They're available at ProWrestlingTees.com. And also, probably it's going on, well, we're going to make a Cyber Tuesday maybe and continue the Black Friday, Cyber Monday gimmick. Nonetheless, bunch of new T-shirts. I will be releasing about 5 more shirts here in the next 2 or 3 weeks before that comes on, so you can get those things for Christmas. And, yeah, we're going to blow it out and have a sale so the working man can save a buck or 2. And if you're still trying to find Steve Austin's Broken Skull IPA by El Segundo Brewing Company, go to ElSegundoBrewingCompany.com, and you can see information about trying to find this wonderful, badass brew. And that being said, if you're in the Southern California area, you can find it at most Whole Foods and Total Wine stores. And for online delivery, you can go to InsideTheCellar.com, InsideTheCellar.com. And I believe they've got a 2 beers and a badass glass with my label on it. But anyway, enough of that. Let me get to business here because I got a long conversation with Mick, and I'm going to get right back to my reads and take care of some business. And thank you guys for supporting the great sponsors of this podcast because they're the ones who let me do this for you free for twice a week. And while I'm at it, I'll just say thanks to the sponsors for supporting this show. And that includes my buddy, my longtime friend, Diamond Dallas Page. DDP and his DDP Yoga are longtime sponsors of this podcast. And that's because Dallas is on a mission to help as many people as possible live a healthier life. And that's why he's giving you a chance to win a copy of the DDP Yoga program signed by Dallas himself. All you have to do is tweet your own DDP Yoga story to @podcast1 and use the hashtag Steve Austin. One winner will be chosen at random, so get your DDP Yoga stories in for your shot. And if you don't have your own DDP Yoga story yet, you still got time to make one. We're going to help you there too, because right now DDP is giving all you people a great deal on DDP Yoga. Just go to ddpyoga.com/Austin to take advantage of it. And DDP Yoga really works. Eric Thacker is living proof. Eric weighed 448 pounds, and his doctor told him that if he didn't do something about his weight and start living a healthier life, he was going to die. So Eric started the DDP Yoga program and lost 30 pounds in just 1 month. And after 2 months, not only was he down 55 pounds, Eric also did something he'd never done before in his life. He did his very first push-up. After 3 months, he changed his diet to healthy whole foods, and by the end of the first year on DDP Yoga, Eric had lost an astounding 185 pounds. Eric reclaimed his life through DDP Yoga. DDP Yoga has helped tens of thousands of people change their lives and live a healthier lifestyle. Diamond Dallas Page has created a program that can offer help to virtually any age, any size, and any fitness level. All you got to do is commit. You can see Eric's journey in video and pictures at ddpyoga.com/Austin. And remember, if you want to win a DDP Yoga program signed by my good buddy Diamond Dallas Page, just tweet your own DDP Yoga story to @podcast1 and use the hashtag Steve Austin. DDP Yoga changes lives. All right, I'm sitting down here at the Broken Skull Ranch down here in South Texas, talking to a man coming from, where are you at, Mick, Long Island?
Yeah, back home in Long Island.
Now, what's the correct way to say it? Because when I talk to Taz, he says he's on Long Island. Are you in Long Island or on Long Island?
I make it a point to say I'm on Long Island. I think either one works, but I'm pretty specific about you're on the island, not in.
Fair enough. Hey, man, anyway, I'm talking to my good buddy, Mick Foley, my former travel partner, one of my arch rivals back in the day, my former tag team partner, former travel partner, my partner in crime way back in the early 90s when we were both trying to crack our good friend Diamond Dallas Page on the road by ribbing him unmercifully. So anyway, I reached out to Mick because I was on his Twitter account, The Real Mick Foley. And that led me to his Facebook account. And Mick had made a very impassioned plea about all things that were going on in WWE and all things that are not going on in WWE. And so I decided to reach out to him and have a discussion about the current state of affairs. And one of the things that me and Mick talked about before I started rolling sound was neither one of us want to come across as two bitter veterans who are griping about every single thing or complaining. But I really enjoyed your post, and, Mick is still a big part of the company. Went into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013. Absolutely, I don't think you're going to find a bigger fan of professional wrestling on planet Earth than Mick Foley. But nonetheless, tell me about this article that you penned, and I think you penned it about 4:30 in the morning, according to your Facebook page.
Yeah, it was kind of like a second part to something I did last week after Raw. You have to sometimes fight the tendency to put something out on social media immediately because it's a great tool for getting the word out. But sometimes there's some knee-jerk reactions and some complaining that really should have been thought through. So I kind of fought that last Monday, but I was bothered all day Tuesday, and I realized this was going back last Tuesday, and I realized I'm on the verge of not watching this show. And I made a decision back when I was with TNA in 2000 that I could choose to be bitter and not watch the show on principle, or I could join my kids for 3 hours, for that 3 hours a week. They love the show. And I went in and I started watching it, and I could really, after having been gone, I could really appreciate everything they did right, all the camera shots they got. And even if I thought storylines could be redundant, I really came to, appreciate the time I was spending with the kids. And it's kind of been a no-brainer that if it's Monday night and I'm home, that's where I'll be for 3 hours every Monday night. But my 12-year-old falls asleep about 9. My 14-year-old has lost interest. And, I've got a really close relationship with my daughter. We do all kinds of things. And I'm home more than I was. I don't necessarily, need to watch the show just for the sake of watching the show. And I realized, man, this show it's not depressing me. It's frustrating me. And when I realized that I was on the verge of not watching, I just thought that I could be indicative of what could be hundreds of thousands of other people who were on the fence, who hadn't been happy about the show for a while, but were watching it because that was their pattern and that's what they did. And so I texted Chris Nowinski, and I said, Chris, this is not a concussion question or a wrestling question. I'm merely calling on you because you're the wisest man I know. He said, okay, no pressure there. And I said, there's a saying, I think it's a political saying, and it says, when you lose blank, you lose blank. And then I said, and it's meant to indicate that if you lose something smaller, it's, representative of a larger loss to follow. And like a minute later, Nowinski comes back with, I believe you're looking for, as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. Like, just had it, and he even like gave me a link to the Wikipedia page for the quote. So it's a pretty famous quote. And last week I said, think of me as Ohio rather, and that if you lose me, you're not just losing this one, die-hard, long-term disgruntled fan, but you are on the verge of risking. And I didn't want to say hundreds of thousands of other people, but as it turned, I think I did say it. I was hesitant to say it. I didn't want to make myself look, try to look that important. But when the ratings came in, it turned out they had lost hundreds of thousands of people. And I felt like I had to follow up last night because this is the show where they're going to try to get some of those people back. And someone needs to say this, like, and you and I are kind of in the same boat in that we love the company, but we don't work for them. I think you do a couple things with them. I do a couple things with them. Thank you. He just turned in his report on the history of Radio City Music Hall. I'm homeschooling the young man. Very good job. But I think what they're going to do, I'm just worried that they're going to kind of double down on what they have, and that we're going to see a very authority-heavy show. And that's where I think guys like you and me who've been around can say, guys, rethink this. Like, this might not be the answer to your problems. Like, the problems, injuries. Seth Rollins' injury came at a terrible time.
Yeah.
Brock's gone away. They've only got I don't know if they have any aces up their sleeve, and I just want them to rethink things. I just want to know if my voice can be out there and be one of those things that's batted around before they go forward with something that I think could be a losing proposition.
But when you think they're going to double down on the authority, do you think they're going to employ the authority even more airtime within the show and a bigger part of the show? That's
one of my concerns. And the reason I call it a concern is somebody asked me a few weeks ago, like, wow, did they ever have like a baby face, I'm using authority here as an authority figure, right, besides you? And I said, yes, Steve Austin was a great babyface commissioner, and so was Ric Flair. But it's been, that was, I did it in 2000. You did it in like 2002, somewhere there. So it's been 14 years since we've had a balance. I always thought that there was a swing in the pendulum and that the show could be heel heavy, and then you kind of try to smooth it out. And I see Hunter, and I see the guy who breathed life into NXT. I see Stephanie, and I see this in my. I've always liked Stephanie. Always thought the world of her, and I see this person who does great things for Be a Star, for Connor's Cure, and I think it confuses people. It's hard to really dislike this guy that's kind of built NXT from the ground up. It's hard to really dislike Stephanie, and I hope that's not nitpicky. But I think and from having worked for some of the really good bookers over the years, that with the exception of Rip Rogers, I think every booker pushed themselves because, strong personalities tend to believe in their own abilities. And but now you're in a position where the strong personalities are not on the marquee for the house shows or the main events, and that's my worry, that they're going to double down with this, with the authority, and I'm not sure that's what people want to see.
Yeah, but it's interesting because the authority is not going to draw any money on the house shows. And I thought maybe, because I never really got a clear explanation of why they broke up, me and Eric Bischoff, when we were the co-GMs, because it was highly entertaining. I really
Yes.
enjoyed
Oh
my
yeah, yeah,
chemistry
yeah.
and working with Eric, man. It was a blast. But, unceremoniously, they just split us up. I never really got an explanation, and we went down the road. Well, we were good for TV, but we weren't drawing any money into houses. So from that standpoint, I could see it. So when you look at the Authority now, it's not drawing money for you in the houses. Then from a TV perspective, to your point, the Authority has been around so long. And, I can dislike Stephanie as a heel because she's so good. She's such a great promo and such a dynamic presence. She has so much charisma, and she can focus in like a laser. And Triple H, to your point, he built NXT. It's just the fact, and I can dislike him too, from a character standpoint, and with all his other accomplishments considered. It's just the fact that it's the same old, and it's always trying to, it's like I had to deal with Vince, and I guess that had been done before, but we took it to a whole new crazy level. Then it was time to get off that and go down a different road. It's just the fact that this has been going on for so long, the same old. And it's like, why can't the powers that be or the Authority turn into this neutral faction, and in which that the heels are fined or punished, or anybody that breaks the rules? I mean, and it goes back, I guess, not to segue off that, but to stick within the Authority. As far as the overall tone or product of Monday Night Raw, presented in a serious shoot fashion where it's a work. And I was just having this conversation last week on a podcast. When you go see the new Tom Cruise movie and Mission Impossible, it's a work. Tom's not really doing this, but they're setting it all up so that you can suspend your disbelief and buy in. And so just from the top to the bottom, I think the storylines just in general have been, so sugar-coated and nothing of real substance. It's hard to suspend disbelief. And it's not really a heat-based show. And there's, even when Seth, before he went down, as great of a worker and performer is inside the ropes and in the ring, he didn't really necessarily have a ton of heat. I haven't seen anybody really have a ton of heat in a long time. Man, I don't think they're booking heat. And I don't know. I think it's a bigger problem than just the Authority. And we'll get into promos, but in just a minute. But I just don't know why they can't play the Authority now as a neutral faction rather than be so heavy-handed and forcing their issue, trying to keep the dude with the belt or the guy that just got the belt and keep throwing obstacles at him. It's been done to death.
Yeah, and I thought for a while they were, kind of a neutral faction, and Stephanie was the one who ushered in the Divas Revolution, which has had its problems, but she was, clearly a babyface on that night, and Triple H at different times come down as a very, level-headed figure of authority. I think, and I'll find myself like driving down the road. And the danger of like bringing up good ideas is, I think if people talk about them, there's less chance that they will get done. And I really wonder, because there were a couple of scenarios going into Survivor Series that seemed to make more sense than the path they chose. But because they made more sense, people were talking about them. And I believe Roman Reigns as part of the Authority would take off. I think that's what that character could have really used. I don't, and I'm not saying this to pander to you, even though I'm not above pandering to you, because you are Stone Cold Steve Austin. But they're kind of putting him in that Steve Austin role, and not everybody can pull that off. I almost wish I could talk to Roman and just say, don't crinkle your eyes. Just work on a couple of things that have, that create negative, almost instantaneously negative feedback, and suffer and succotash and things like that that Vince may or may not have written for him, was probably not the right way to go. I think Roman really prospered, a little air of mystery surrounding him. But going back to the idea that Survivor Series could have ended a different way, and that it may have gone the way it did in order to surprise people, is kind of, 1 week down the road, there's nothing to be gained by that surprise if it's not best for long-term business.
So, do you think his nuances, his mannerisms are too cliched or overacting, or and trying to force this personality that he is not?
It's going to be really interesting moving forward. I know that there are a couple of them that, and I want to say, and this is what is it? In the South, you say, bless his heart before you say something bad about him.
Yeah,
in the North, you say, with all due respect.
Yeah.
He's a good guy, and he's a hard worker. And he deserves a top spot. I think, even if it was something like, and I'm not a believer in taking, people to acting classes, but I think if you were to show him some things and say, he told me to call him Joe when I met him. That's what I call him. I believe it's his middle name. So, Joe, these expressions are killers. Like you are too handsome, like you look great. There's an art to getting sympathy. Like he's got a couple strikes against him because he is a handsome guy and he looks like he's carved out of granite. He's got to find another way to connect with people, and to make a couple of expressions that are instantly off-putting is not the way to go. If the authority wants to throw a ton of heat on him, it's possible, that he can come out on top. Putting him in the Stone Cold Daniel Bryan role, I don't know. I remember and I remember my kids coming home, and I talked about this last time that I was on Raw, which was October of 2014, and they'd just seen the Shield for the first time, and they were like in awe, like, Dad, these guys are amazing, and they were, they were incredible, and there's money in a Shield reunion. I think there's money with Reigns and Rollins. I think there's money in Rollins coming back. I would not bet against that guy being ready for Mania, as much of a training maniac as he is. So I think there's a lot of positive things on the horizon. And when I'm driving on the road thinking about this stuff, I'm like, what if Shane O'Mac came back? There are a couple of those, like, oh my God, moments that you could throw into the mix, and really get people talking. I don't know if they have any of them lined up. And
but Mick, do you feel like these guys are being coached up too much as far as how to react? And it's almost like they're overdoing or overacting in almost every regard to try to enunciate or with a facial expression, oh, this hurts, or oh, this is the thrill of victory, or oh, this. It just seems like it's a little over the top, and I think if you go back to when you started, I mean, training with Dominic DeNucci, I mean, probably very humble beginnings, low key, and learning the ropes, and you weren't really coached up or given some pep rally or speech to fire you up, but you went through the paces, you learned how to sell, and to me, I think they're coaching them to do all these things, and it just creates kind of a caricature of what you're actually supposed to be doing. It's almost like pretending to be a pro wrestler than being one. And there's a fine line there, but there is a difference between the two.
And I think there's, you and I have talked about this before, about the art of the promo and how good things were. And I don't mean to say we never had bullet points or there weren't times when I had specific lines, especially if I heard that Vince wanted me to get a specific line. And by God, I was going to get that line in. But we had this freedom to improvise, and therefore I think, take you and me in the ring with a promo. I was reacting to things you said because I didn't know exactly what you were going to say. It wasn't a rehearsed action with known words and
right.
And therefore almost scripted outcomes. And I just I don't know why. And you this is one of the things that I appreciate you hammering this home on your podcast. It's missing from the product. And I know Vince was there when we were breaking ground every week. And I threw in the phrase, swinging and missing, because I think it's important, that people not be afraid to make mistakes. I think that's one of the great learning tools. So when I was very fortunate to do a special for the network based on the one-man show I brought around, and the knock I think I had on the company, I'm not sure if this part aired or not, if I actually said it on the night it was taped. I said that, and I come to think of it, I think I specifically left out the knock on the company, knowing they were filming it. But I said, when you script things, you do take away the chances of disasters. And then I'll joke and say, we're not likely to see another Mark Henry date go terribly wrong, in our lifetime. But at the same time, when you try to eliminate disasters and you try to eliminate the chances that guys like me and The Rock will go 14 minutes overtime on turn a 12-minute segment into 26, you also take away that likelihood or that chance, that possibility that something really special will take place out there. And I think if you looked at your top 10 promos or my top 10 promos or guys of of that era who did some good stuff, in probably half those cases they were things that kind of took on a life of their own. With Austin 316, King of the Ring 97 being probably the best example of that. I've been having a lot of fun talking about Dusty Rhodes on the road and how much his promos meant to believe it or not, my 12-year-old son just became fascinated with Dusty's promos, the Hard Times promo.
Yeah.
And what else? And I have this larger point where I'll actually do a little bit of the promo. People who've never heard it are caught up. I do about a minute and a half of the promo. And then I said, if an 18-year-old Virgil Riley Runnels had handed that into an English class, they would have given him a C-. And there would be notes in red paper in red writing saying, Mr. Runnels, technically there were more than two bad people in the history of the world, And if we were to construct such a list, it's highly doubtful that American actor John Wayne would actually be on it. But at the same time, you couldn't have Vince tell any of the guys, and the writers worked their butts off, and it's a thankless job, but you couldn't tell one of those guys, I want a Hard Times promo.
Right.
Go in that room and deliver. You couldn't do it. I still believe in the heart and soul of the promo and the way that guys like Dusty were able to breathe life into these into the words.
But half the thing about a promo, Mick, is just say, for instance, you and I are working a program, and like you said, I'm saying something, and you don't know the nuts. You might have a general idea of what I'm going to say, but you're forced to listen. And so, dude, listening is a whole different thing than just standing there and waiting to say your response because you already know your response. Man, when you're hanging on every word, you've got to answer the question or answer what I've said. And so, it may behoove them to go out there and do some stuff with Roman. Hey, man, I hosted the 2K paddle last year sometime, and Roman Reigns was sitting right beside me, and I was going right back and forth with him just off the cuff. And the kid is quick-witted, he's smart, he's funny. And he's got a lot of charisma when you just let him be himself. So if you can set the table for him, give him something to respond off of. Just throw some softballs to him, but let the kid do and say, what he feels and what he wants. You could gloss over a couple of tips to give him, but just let him be himself. And I think he's trying so hard to be what they want him to be that he's having a hard time being himself. And as you know, man, in all the very unique characters you were able to create, each one of those people that you were was a big part of Mick Foley, just turned up and in a different direction than the other characters you created. But you were basically being you. And so I think this kid, if he's allowed to just be himself, let him go. Let him fall. He's already fallen on his face trying to remember promos. So let him fall on his face, pay his dues, And, once you get in that water and you sink a few times and someone's got to pull you out, it's sink or swim. Eventually he's going to start swimming and he's going to be just fine. He has all the makings of a superstar, and they call them all superstars from the get-go anyway. But there's a big difference between being called a superstar because that's what the name of the talent is and actually being one and drawing money. The kid's got all the potential in the world. They just need to let him go. And if he falters, he fails organically. He just picks up, he dusts himself off, and he keeps going. Do you understand what I'm saying, that though? By being forced to listen, it's like our conversation. You've got to listen to what I'm saying because then you're going to respond. Let the kid do that.
Yeah. There were some pivotal moments for me and you, and this is something I talked about a little bit in the first book, but it's not something that's common wrestling lore. Was a camaraderie and also a little bit of a competition in '97 when it was clear that we were going to be able to kind of take off. We were going to be given the chance to take off. That's why I pointed out that to me, in my mind, the Attitude Era began. And I don't know if you remember the meeting. Vince called us together, and he admitted that things that worked in the past were not working. We were losing the Monday Night War. WCW had a really strong hand, and your character was just starting to take off, and Vince said, we're going to need input. If the character's going to work, we're going to need your input. We're going to have to do things differently than we had. And you and I were like right there, like the number 2 and 3 heel role, and your character was really taking off. And at that time, and this is he's a bless his heart, with all due respect, this guy's turned out to be seriously one of the best ex-wrestlers, as far as being a positive person and spreading a positive. Mark Barrow's a heck of a guy, but the fact that he had come in with that big contract, literally days after I came in for just the guarantee, and months after you came in,
yes,
kind of fueled us, and we'd be talking or riding, and we knew that we were going to be given this chance. And so they would put the two of us. Do you remember a couple of matches we had as heels? They would put us in the ring, and it was like a kind of a magic period because the handcuffs were off. There were no restraints. We were given a chance. I remember at one time, man, the match just seemed to be going forever. And afterwards, they said, "I'm sorry, but WCW went into a break. You guys were hot. We wanted to keep the action going," and they had that kind of faith in us that we could pull it off. The other one I remember is you and I in a heel match in Montreal when Vader was going to be part of the Vader was going to come out. Do you remember this? Vader was going to be part of the finish, and then you and I kind of changed it around, and for whatever was the better fit, it was probably you going over instead of a DQ with Vader hitting the ring, and we just decided not to tell Leon that we had changed the finish. And you and I came in hot, yelling at each other as a rib on Vader. He's got his gear on, and he's ready to run out to the DQ. He has no idea that we've changed things around. And guys were gathered around. I think they're going to see a fight between Mankind and Stone Cold. But I just remember that feeling like of something taking off and being part of something good. We were the underdogs against WCW. We both knew that we were going to have a chance, to take these characters as far as we could. And for me, I knew that I could go out there and try things and fail. And not be reprimanded for it because there was an understanding that it was more important to try and fail than to stand in the middle of the road. And I'm quoting Mr. Miyagi here, but I think that advice is kind of timeless. You stand on one side of the road, you're fine. You stand on the other, you're fine. Go in the middle, and you're squashed just like a grape. And I guess in a sense that's what I'm talking about, the 8-8 booking that WWE has favored for a while. That seeming to hurt them with the loss of the big stars. That we're trying to, we got a bunch of 8-and-8 guys that we're trying to, that we're supposed to take an interest in.
Referencing the 50-50 booking.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Oh, I don't know how much y'all take Uber, and I know you've been listening to me tell you what a great opportunity it is to drive with Uber to earn some extra money. I know one driver said that she had 2 kids who are really into sports. They play soccer, they swim, and one of them also does gymnastics. I know all of you parents know how expensive that can be, and also know how hard it can be to make it to all the games and meets when you're working full time. Well, this driver said that's why she drives with Uber. She makes great money, and because she chooses her own hours, she can spend as much time as she wants with her kids. She ain't got to miss any more soccer games or swim meets. She also loves being her own boss. Now, I can dig that. I know you can too. And it's easy to start driving with Uber. You just need a car and a license. Uber is also great if you're looking to make some extra cash for the holidays. You can give rides around your regular work schedule, maybe a couple after work or on your weekends, and have some money to spend on holiday presents. You won't have to worry about how to pay those gimmicks they send in the mail called bills. Now is the prime time to cash in driving with Uber. You'll thank me for telling you how to get paid every week, and you never know. I could be the one getting in your car. You got a car, you got a license, put them both to work for you and start earning serious, life-changing money today. Sign up to drive with Uber. Visit drivewithuber.com. That's drivewithuber.com. Drivewithuber.com.
Hey, kiddies, Ace Man here. I sat down with the great Bryan Cranston for a special one-on-one interview in honor of the launch of his new movie, Trumbo. Go to Podcast One now and subscribe to the newsletter for a special bonus video of myself and Cranston. And don't miss the podcast. Available at Podcast One.
Sign up before November 30th for the encore video release. That's podcastone.com, podcastone.com.
All right, thanks for hitting the download button on today's family-friendly version of the Steve Austin Show. You know I do this podcast for free for you guys, and the only way I'm able to do this is thanks to all the great sponsors of the Steve Austin Show. So please support the sponsors who let me open up 2 cans of Audio Whoop-Ass for you free every single week. That includes DollarShaveClub.com. I've been a member of DollarShaveClub.com for quite a while now, and they've got shaving down to a science. 1, use a fresh blade. 2, use their Dr. Carver shave butter. That's it. Great shave every time if you do those 2 simple things. And millions of guys are already doing just exactly that. They're getting great Dollar Shave Club razors delivered right to their front doors for a third of the price of mega razor companies. And that savings means Dollar Shave Club members can shave with the fresh blade whenever they want. And man, when you combine that fresh blade with Dr. Carver's shave butter, your skin is unbelievably smooth and soft. Dr. Carver's shave butter is not your average shave foam. It's made from high-quality ingredients that make your skin feel soft and moisturized, and it lets that fresh